and welcome once again to Escaping Dystopia. My name is Wa. I'll be your host. Today is January 26th, 2025. It's happened. We're here. This is the place where we're at now. I've been doing this show and following American politics now for a generation plus. We're going to cover some of that here in the show tonight, to be fully honest. It's rough. The U.S. is in a very difficult place. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Things pretty fucked. Donald last time completely mismanaged the pandemic and 1 million Americans died. I expect it to be a bit worse this time. A little bit about myself real quick. If you're just running into me, I've been doing stuff for a long time online. This last election cycle, my wife and I actually got involved with an issue that's very important to us. Let me share this with you real quick. This is an introduction. If you maybe kind of recognize me or my voice and you happen to live in Colorado, there's a reason for that. You'll put it together here in just a second.
Voters in Colorado will decide whether to put abortion protections into the state constitution. With details on that, here's Denver 7's Brandon Richard.
When discovered their unborn baby didn't have kidneys and wouldn't survive, they made the decision to have an abortion. Christina was 5 months pregnant.
Dealing with abortion is difficult enough without the government telling you what you can and can't do.
The couple sharing their story in a campaign in favor of Amendment 79. Amendment 79 would put the right to an abortion into the Colorado Constitution and overturn Colorado's 40-year ban on using public funds for abortion. Supporters say it's important to take the power away from lawmakers.
I know what the stroke of a pen can do to abortion rights, and that's very important to us. That's very important to me, to be able to put it in the Constitution so that future legislators can't change it.
So, what happened? We won. We won 62% of the vote. We needed 55. And now the right to abortion is written into the Colorado Constitution. I'm very happy with that. My family, we all are. We've been involved in that and other issues for a long time. That's not really the point of this show, but I did want to introduce myself a little bit. I am the guy who's in that commercial. I've been doing this show for almost a decade now, and I do a number of other things that I'll share here in a minute. So, I am involved. We had a huge victory, and I'm ready to keep fighting, and I'm not going to stop. So if you're wondering about my attitude towards what we should take towards the Trump administration, actually I have a good example. That's how we should treat them. How Guts does. And if you're not familiar with that, welcome to the hardcore land. Where are we and how we got here? So my first section here that we're going to cover is I've been following politics in America, in the U.S., for a long time, since the late 20th century, right? The late 1900s. I've been following this stuff pretty close. I've been on the internet since it started. I was a nerd in high school. I was on BBSs, and then the internet came around. I've been here the whole time, right? What's happened has been pretty tough to swallow. I'm not gonna lie. It sucks. But the track of it over the years is pretty clear now, and the fall of the U.S. empire and the decisions that we've made politically over the last 25 years. I'm going to run through that for a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next thing. This is going to be pretty rough for those of you who haven't been following politics for that long, or were perhaps born in the 21st century, or don't know about a lot of this stuff. I am 50 years old now, so I've been around a little bit, and I've been following this stuff for the majority of those years. You can question my lived experience if you'd like. You can question my analysis if you'd like. You need to bring something to the table if you'd like to do that. And that includes data, hard data, real data, actual facts, and not general updates or feelings or something you may have heard someplace. There was a point in time when having to cite references on the internet in order to get anyone's agreement was basic and assumptive. Nowadays, things are a little bit different, and I'll get to that a little bit later in how our media broke and what broke it and what that has kind of done to the human experience. and how it's changed our perception of ourselves and led us directly to fascism, which is where we are now. Don't make a mistake about that. So, the year was 2000, right? Bill Clinton had just gone through really probably 10 years of, at that point, probably the most successful the U.S. has ever had. The U.S. was celebrating the Russia, USSR had collapsed. We had clearly become the world leader. This is where stuff like Fukuyama's or the neocons and their this American century about to come out. And so then we had the 2000 election, and we had again the successor to an incredibly successful economic president in Clinton. Again, one of the more progressive presidents coming off of Reagan and Bush that we'd had. He had an affair while he was in office. This somehow led to a great deal of moral high noting from people like, oh gosh, I should have looked up his name before I got here. But in 2000, when Clinton got impeached, Dennis Hastert is his name. He was the guy who was the Speaker of the House running this. He later turned out that he was a child molester. So anyway, the taint of Clinton hurt Gore. The election was very close. It ended up coming down to a state where one of the candidates' brothers was the governor. And lo and behold, he wins. And we get George W. Bush in 2000. So this turning point for the 21st century really put us on a horrible path immediately. We had gone from having a balanced budget, of coming back and raising taxes on the wealthy and balancing the budget. We had a balanced budget in 2000 in the United States. We don't now, right? But so George Bush came in, decided to cut a bunch of taxes. They're deficit-funded tax cuts. This has been a Republican thing forever. Immediately, our surplus disappeared. 9 months later, we get 9/11. And then the world changes for this century. We start to do all these ridiculously stupid things, despite the fact that it was, in fact, these Islamic extremists that attack us. We decide to invade Iraq after going into Afghanistan. That was the reality for 20 years or so. And that will color the rest of this story as we move on. 2004, Bush gets reelected. Worked very hard to fight that, protested a lot. Did a lot of marching, did a lot of stuff. I was pretty distraught with that loss in 2004. Bush the country was running on this high of war, this war high, and was doing that. And it was very hard to break through and talk to anyone. And so Bush was reelected with that war furor, which had started in 2003. So really a year later into the raw war stuff, people still thought it was possible for that to turn out well. By 2006, it became clear that this few months of military action that they had planned in Iraq was not going to turn out the way they wanted. And Bush lost the House and basically became irrelevant as a lame duck in 2006, leading to the wide open Democratic primary. As many people know, Obama then came out, really impressed a lot of people. I'd seen him a number of times on C-SPAN in between those years. I was very impressed with his intellect, his ability as an orator and a thinker. He was a very deep thinker, which, again, in American politics, as things have been dumbed down incredibly over the last 20 years, having someone like Obama who would actually be out there and take the time to fill out a full thought and have a multi-sentence point was impressive, and it was nice. So he came on and was quite a bit more authentic and real and just a better communicator than Hillary at that point. So Obama gets the nomination. Hillary eats the crow. And the country, after being sick of Republican politics, goes with Obama. Barack Hussein Obama, which, again, it's hard to understand how kind of radical that was given the anti-Islamic just kind of furor that had happened after 2001, leading into the Iraq War and all that. So having somebody with literally a name, Hussein, in the White House was pretty incredible. So 2012, actually about 2010, I guess, right? You see the really racist, nasty head of the United States start to pop up in the Tea Party. The whole birth certificate thing and all that. Remember, that's what Donald did originally to get on the stage, was go in with these white supremacists and racists and demand the birth certificate. Remember, he's going to have all these press conferences. You guys remember this? Anyway, that's how he got in. That was his first thing, was this racist bullshit, going after Obama. And then Obama clowned him, remember, at the press thing, and pissed him off. And that was one of the things that a lot of these white supremacists just couldn't handle, and it broke them in half. This was the Tea Party. This is why, again, we're at fascism now, is because these white supremacists got so mad they said, fuck everything, fuck all of you all, fuck this democracy, we got to get in charge again. And I don't think you guys, some people may not understand, but that is literally what they did and how they felt and what's happened. This is a big fuck you to everyone who's not an older white male. If you don't know that that's what they thought about you guys, I'm explaining this to you. I know a lot of these people. I'm from this generation. I know what they were mad about. And they were mad about being set aside. So the Tea Party goes, 2016 comes. Now this is the real chance for the United States to set itself up great for the 21st century. We've made it through the Bush years. Obama has actually passed something closer to universal health care. The number of uninsured people, you can't be canceled now when you get cancer. And we have this chance to build on all of these victories and all of these stuff. But a lot of people are like, no, we got to go way left, super far left. Now, during this 8 years, Hillary Clinton had been Secretary of State, doing a number of other things, and putting in the work, as it were, in my opinion. So I thought that she had done enough work to be an effective president. I thought she was going to be awesome. So I supported her in that candidacy. A lot of people, a lot of bros, once again, there's been, again, a sexist shift in this country over this 25-year period that you really need to understand that as a white male, I'm on that side, so I can feel what a lot of these folks have felt. And there's this quote, right? The move to equality from a place of privilege feels like oppression. So I can certainly see how folks like myself have felt oppressed as the world moves to equality. But the amount of empathy that's been out there for that is basically zero, and I totally understand why. But again, if you want to understand how we ended up here, you need to understand where we were and how we changed, and what forces have let people think this was a rational solution. So Obama goes for his 2 terms. You got the Tea Party going, 2016 now. Chance to really, really lock it down. And there's 2 things happening. Well, 3 things. You have Donald doing his racist Tea Party stuff. And then you have the bros, the Bernie bros, who have finally seen a country that has a little bit of a left and a little bit of an appeal to that. And I've always liked Bernie. I like his ideas. His politics are bad and he's not good at it, which is why he kept losing those nominations, because he couldn't make the kind of compromises you need to build a larger coalition. A lot of people on the far left think that their issues and their pet issues are really popular, and they are not. And candidates can't adopt those positions without losing this whole other big section of rational people who are like, well, how are you going to pay for that? Right? And so a lot of the far left just gets pretty nasty. Now in 2016, and I documented this a lot, I've again following this for a long time, the Bernie bros, after Bernie lost, did a whole lot of time echoing the horribly sexist bullshit that the Republicans were throwing at Clinton, which, by the way, again, they had been throwing at her since the 1990s. There's this term, this inchoate hate for Hillary, and a lot of people hated her, and they didn't know why, and it's because her name had been associated with negative hatred their entire lives. When she came onto the scene in the 1990s and changed the image of what a professional woman could be and what, in fact, a woman could aspire to, that made a lot of people very angry. And a lot of people who live in the world that she created see her only as a symbol of power and not as someone who created that path. This is a pretty consistent theme that you might pick up on here, in that the world that we live in this 2024 has been created very much by the left ideology in the United States, but the far left has assumed now that it has existed forever without effort. And now, as we are going to shift back to the right, so fast and so quickly, people will maybe actually start to appreciate how many of these gains were fought for over the last 20 and 30 years. Donald revoked the executive order that LBJ, I believe, put in to prohibit the US government from engaging with openly discriminatory businesses. They now can. So you can now shovel taxpayer money to openly racist businesses. This will happen very consistently over the next few years, which gives them a lot of lifeblood. Anyway, so the Bernie bros come in, backstab Hillary. Hillary loses. Now, that's not the only thing that happened in 2016. In 2016, we're also now in this internet everywhere culture, Facebook. We have the Russians literally targeting particular counties in states because they're like, oh, wait, you mean if we flip 100,000 votes, we can win the presidency? And again, when you have these state actors now applying intelligence service level, state level resources against election systems, and again, if you've never really been involved with political parties in the United States, these are not big money things. They are shooshing cheap. The way you have to keep track of money, again, because there's laws around all of this to try and keep corruption out. All of that is going to be gone now. And I don't think people quite appreciate what that's going to look like because nobody's really experienced that for a little bit. And history books don't translate well to TikTok. We'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, the Bernie bros and the Russians and a whole lot of people conspire, and Donald ekes out a victory in 2016. This is really bad because this was the chance to really put the boomers down, really get this consistent, get 2 terms of a president, and then another one to really lock down a lot of these progressive ideals, and boom, other way. Instead, we get these ridiculous Supreme Court justices that take away the right to abortion, that then put in the presidential immunity that kept Donald out of jail. Again, these are a result of the 2016 election, when the Supreme Court then shifts over to the right, and now abortion is no longer a right in this country. And now the president is above the law as a direct result of these 2016 elections. Again, this is the kind of stuff, it builds over time. And you can't just look at a current state and be like, oh, this is the way things are, blah, blah, blah. Understanding the dynamics of what has forced the changes over time helps to inform the decisions making forward going into the future, right? So Bernie bros fuck over Biden, fuck over Hillary, Donald wins. Biden steps in, 2020. Biden steps in because we needed a Biden. Because he was like, well, we gotta, this can't stand, I gotta beat this guy. And he wins the primary. He beats Bernie again because everyone, again, Bernie would not have won. And I just, people don't quite realize how not popular socialism is in the United States. And it's not becoming more popular. Again, you have to realize that this anti-government thing that now also infects the left destroys any concept of popular socialism. When you're saying that the government needs to be the solution to these problems, you have to first build up in the public a concept of government that is positive. Because if you're saying, oh, the government's going to solve all these other problems, and all these other people are like, well, the government's creating most of these problems, what are you talking about? There's a huge disconnect there, right? And this is one of the reasons why socialism has not really taken off very much in the US as a popular ideology, whereas progressivism does, because then you're like, oh, well, we would like to solve it. We'd like to do this, not this, oh, government can do this and that. And everyone's like, can it though? Right? Like immediately they're like, Thor, like, really? Yeah. So that's why a lot of the socialism stuff is just not that popular. So Biden comes in, and then after the pandemic, we have over the last 4 years, and this is one of the things that blows the mind. Biden comes in after a pandemic, leads one of the greatest economic expansions in the history of the country. Most consistent job growth for years. Nearly every metric you could possibly look at is better. Most of the gains are actually concentrated on the lower end of the spectrum because now he's starting to make decisions across the board that are like, well, these rich people have too much. Let's push it down, push it down, push it down. And these are all consistent long-term decisions. The FTC getting involved, the Consumer Protection Agency getting, all of these, again, each one of these is a little ratchet, right? A little ratchet, trying to tighten it down, trying to bring it back, trying to bring it back. And the immense gains we got from no longer being at war, which a lot of people don't get because of what I'll talk about here in a second, but not being actively in war was a huge economic boon for the United States. Our 20-year foray into Afghanistan, Biden ended it. He got nothing but shit for that because a lot of people who made their careers on the United States being in an endless war were mad that it was over. And our media, military, industrial complex hated Biden for that. And they always hated Biden. So one of the reasons why a lot of the public didn't know about what a great president he was is because our media is broken and they would not tell people. I'll talk to that here in a little bit, but this brings us now to the 2024 election. The 2024 election was really, really fucked up, folks. You guys understand this? So I've got this other thing. Let me pull this up because I do need to share this, and I'll put the link in this. This is a story I wrote about. Because you remember the first debate, and I watched it. I watched actually the whole thing, but I realized by halfway through that anyway, what the narrative was going to be. But after that, I watched Biden a few more times, and he was fine. He's old, but he was fine. But he got forced out of the race. And again, the president of the United States was forced out of the race. There it is. So while this was going on, I was following all of this because, again, I was really interested. I thought, and I continue to feel, and I'll share this in the thing, but this is a thing I did a while back about what was going on this last summer when they forced Biden out. All the Democrats who were asking Biden to step out of the race had a similar aspect to their fundraising. And that goes back to the understanding about how the United States 2024 election, again, why we're here now in 2025, changed on October 7th, 2023. See, because on October 7th, 2023, that's when Hamas attacked Israel. Now you might say, well, what does that have to do with the U.S. election? I could probably do a whole show on this because the dynamics of the left and the right in the United States regarding Israel, particularly in this context now of the United States no longer being at war in Afghanistan, but a new intifada, whatever exploding in Gaza, is difficult because there's not a good right answer. As I explained in that story, both sides of this want the other side obliterated and won't accept anything other than that. When you're the US president, there's not a right answer there. And this is where Biden got really, really screwed because A, you have a genocide going on in Israel. Clearly that has been happening over this time. And Biden didn't stop it. But then on the other side, if Biden even said anything to Netanyahu, I've got this documented in that story as well. Now all of a sudden Netanyahu's telling all the Democratic donors that Biden is going to cut off Israel. And then all the people on the left don't believe that Biden ever said that because that's not going to be in the news. But that is what Biden and Netanyahu are doing behind the scenes. So this front scene, back scene, left, right, doing this, trying to negotiate, all of this over an ideological left that demands perfection or nothing. So now in the 2024 election, Biden gets forced out by Democratic donors, unhappy about everything, and Harris takes over as the nomination. As I put in that article, I felt that was not going to work because of various things, and now we saw that it did not, in fact, work. I was excited about the Harris campaign. I thought she could do all right, but again, the structural difficulties for a black woman in a male in a sexist, racist country like the United States are big, and there's a lot of people who won't ever put that in a poll, but they will on a secret ballot. And I think it's at least 3 to 4 to 5%. And I'm sorry, but that's what I will continue to believe. And that's why I think Biden won pretty easy in 2020, and I think he would have won again in 2024 if he'd stuck around. Because again, Donald is a fascist. And let me go, because now we're in 2024, in 2025, and we can talk about this because Donald is a rapist, and we know this because it's very clear. Donald is a felon because he finally got sentenced. Oh, that was one of the dumbest things ever. He was supposed to be sentenced last summer, but the judge was like, well, the Supreme Court, remember, in the 2016 election, thanks, Bernie, guys, the Supreme Court said he couldn't be. And so now he was supposed to be sentenced on July 11th. He wasn't. So now our media, because he technically was not a felon despite being found guilty because he hadn't been sentenced, wouldn't call him a felon. So most of the United States public did not know that the president is a felon because of his raping ways. Again, he was on camera before the 2016 election bragging about his sexual assault. He was found liable for $100 million for raping a woman. But again, the media wouldn't call him that. So our media is wildly broken. Why? Well, because it's been consolidated down to a few people. You could fit all the people who can drive or change a narrative or force a president out of a presidential race in a room, in a small room, in this small room. That consolidation of our media, as well as the internationalization of it, has led to a wildly misinformed and uninformed public. TikTok. You know, it's hard for me to really get into this because, again, this could be a whole show and talking about it. But TikTok has never been not a Chinese propaganda platform. And I think a lot of people now, even 3 weeks ago, I would get so much more pushback on this than I would today as people try and go put free Palestine videos into TikTok and realize they can't. And put in videos criticizing Trump and realize they can't. And realizing, like, wait a second, what is going on here? It's like, yes, this is a propaganda platform controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. They do not share your interests. What they did like was when you were doing things that were hurting Biden. And they would promote those all day long. And all the Genocide Joe videos would get you tons of followers and perhaps even enough to monetize your influence. And be a paid promoter of the ideas that China would like to see out there. And I don't think people realize how bad TikTok is in that sense. And it's hard to finally get around to that. And that's where we're at now. Right? We're in 2025. We have U.S. media controlled by 5 guys whose interests aren't necessarily aligned with most of the U.S. public. They're shareholders, and you can look at their personal donations to see where their interests lie on the international stage. And we also have at the same time this now 2025 AI world coming into place. Now, this is something that I should talk about a little bit more because, again, I am doing stuff here. So, for those of you aware, this is the Escaping Dystopia channel. We're on YouTube. At this point, I'm fine with continuing to put my content there. I don't do it on Facebook anymore, which is where this show was at one point. I'm not doing the TikTok stuff, so I'm going to try and stick with Google stuff for a little bit and see what happens. I also have this other thing I built a little while ago. It's called Haiku the News. I'm working on this. This is actually an AI-generated analysis of news network. Again, I think that it's more important for people to get out there and start creating their own things and doing stuff and not necessarily letting this be dictated from on high, because there is so much out there. And we need to start talking to a little bit more without these corporate mediators in between us. So I'm doing that. And then this is, I'm working on a game too. Do this, oh no! Oh shoot! I'll have to get that there. That's not the best thing. I had it running earlier, but it's running on this computer that I'm doing as my studio today. Here's the thing, and I'll go to this a little bit more. This is my big denouement for this, right? What's next? Like, what are we going to do, right? I can't tell you what to do, and I'm not going to. I think everybody should make their own decisions about stuff. As for me, I've told you, I'm planning to fight like guts. I plan to continue to work and talk, and I'm not going to accept the lies. I'm not going to accept the bullshit. I'm not going to accept the fascism. To me, the lies are the fascism. And when you start to do it, they're going to have to lie very quickly about how the economy is going. They're going to have to lie very quickly about what employment looks like. They're going to have to lie very quickly about the people that they're arresting and deporting. The number of executive orders that Donald has put that, again, clearly reflect and are exactly what Project 2025 said would do. And then our media, which again is broken, turn around and said, no, 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 he said that that's not him. But it was, and it is. So can we trust those same people, our corporate media, that led us here? Of course not. Of course not. So this breakdown is real, and it's big, but it's necessary. That's the breakdown that you need to have, is rebuild those bonds of trust and look for where you can find good and accurate and real information about the world. The corporate media has some use, and again, I use it in some places for things, but the world is not the most accurate. And now that we have many of them actively kissing fascist ass, you need to be a little more skeptical. And maybe step away and look outside and look at the real world for a little bit. And spend as much time as you can there. So, as I'll be one of those who's very much yes, my show is here, but you should probably log off and spend less time online. Which means you're probably not going to watch the show. Which is fine. But if you're here, maybe make this the last thing you watch today. Have a good night. I'll be back.